Hi, I'm Ciara. I am a children's and family food writer over at My Fussy Eater, and I'm really delighted to be here on the Frolo app answering some of your questions about your kids, their eating habits, and of course picky eating. So I'll get straight to it. The first question says, my 6-year-old fussy eater will eat what's on her plate eventually. She takes very small mouthfuls and argues every step of the way. She'll stall as well, leaving the table, drinking all her squash, then isn't hungry and puts the TV on. It's making mealtimes a real drain. Her older sister eats almost everything, no bother, and I worry that she feels left out at mealtimes because all of my time is taken up dealing with the youngest stubbornness. So in this case, I think this is something quite a few of us deal with when we have more than one child. It just shows that if you have one child that's really fussy and another child that eats really well, it's nothing that you've done wrong. So please don't blame yourself. Don't worry about it. It's not your parenting. It's not anything that's got wrong. It's just the individual children. Some end up eating loads and some end up being very fussy. In this case, because she's 6, she's a little bit older and she kind of is at an age where she should start to understand food and what it does for her body and the needs that her body has in terms of food. And I think this is a really great time to start talking to your children about food and what it does. So with my daughter, she's 9 now, a little bit older, but when she was about this age, I talked to her about what, say, brown rice would do, because at the time she loved gymnastics, she loved to run and dance, she still loves dancing now. So I talk a lot about what food will do for her body and why she needs certain foods to be able to do the activities. I think as well, probably because she's 6, she's at school now, maybe most of these battles are happening around dinner time, and it could be the case as well that she's just a bit tired, she's a bit overtired. So in these cases I would always recommend front loading food, so getting as much food into children at the beginning of the day, so for breakfast, for lunch, even for afternoon snacks, because if you know that that dinner time is always the battleground, then you don't really have to worry too much. You know you've got some calories, you've got some nutrients, you've got all the good stuff in the rest of the day. So that would be my advice in that case. The second one then says, I'm at my wit's end with a fussy 18-month-old who has multiple allergies, so I'm really limited on what I can give him at best of times. He won't try anything new and refuses to eat anything but his established favourites. How do I get past this? Let him be hungry or just stick to a few favourites? I usually end up doing the latter and worry I'm making things worse. So for an 18-year-old or 18-month-old child rather, we're kind of at a different spectrum of fussiness. There's 18 months is still so young. They are kind of coming up to that toddler stage where they're starting to get a little bit of independence and they're trying to exert that independence, but we still have a lot of control over what they eat. In this case, I would recommend giving him kind of snack platters, like sharing platters, divided plates with lots of different foods in it. And I would recommend putting maybe 3/4 of the foods in the plate, his favourite foods, foods that you know he will like, and a couple of portions as well of foods that he doesn't like so much or that he really doesn't like. He needs to be exposed to these foods over and over again. I mean, the experts say up to 15 times, but personally I think it's probably 20-30 times even more, especially at this young age. So keep putting those foods out. Don't put a lot of pressure on him to eat it, but it just increases the exposure over time. So number 3 says, my 4-year-old refuses all food except a few favourites, and he also refuses to touch certain things, especially in a group setting. He smells everything before he tries it too. He has no problem playing with sensory things like slime, sand, water, etc. I'm wondering if this is a sign of something more or just a phase. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a sign of something other than that he might just be a bit sensory sensitive when it comes to smell. So, you know, a lot of people have different levels of their senses essentially. So some people obviously have better eyesight or better hearing, and the same when it comes to tastes and smells. Some people will taste and smell certain foods a lot stronger than others. So it could be the case that he just has a very strong sense of smell. So I wouldn't worry that he's smelling food. If anything, it's probably a good thing because it means that he's quite curious. Yeah, and definitely I think in this stage it wouldn't be extreme fussy eating. I would just say encourage this behaviour. If anything, let him touch and taste and put foods against his mouth. Again, he's still quite young at 4. Allowing kids to play with food as well is always a great option. You can bring things like berries, because, you know, they're soft, they're very squishy, quite messy. Bring them into the bath instead and let kids play with them there, so there's no mess. The next question then says, my 6-year-old son has a learning disability and was diagnosed with celiac in February. He seems to be becoming fussier at eating. He doesn't like meat or fish. He'll eat fish, fingers, cheese and eggs. I'm worried he's not getting enough nutrients. He will eat cucumbers, tomatoes and raspberries. Any ideas? I think first of all, don't be overly worried, because that list of foods that you have given me is actually quite wide. It's often in, again, talking about extreme fussy eating, we're talking about a few foods from the same group, like a few carbs only, or a few veggies only, or a few kind of protein fats only. And in this case, there is kind of a wide variety. In terms of getting nutrients into him, I would say, first of all, maybe try to make some of your own homemade options. So you say he'll eat fish fingers. Is that the packet fish fingers or ones you make yourself? If he eats the packet ones, then maybe try making some homemade ones yourself, because you can just make them a little bit more nutritious. So into the breadcrumb mixture, say you could put some ground almonds, so you're getting a bit of extra protein, extra fat, loads and loads of nutrients in nuts as well. So you can use little tricks like that to give him the foods that you know he'll eat, but you can add a little nutritional boost to them as well. Also, I would, similar to the answer about the 18-month-old, I would give lots of options. Give a compartment plate with loads of different options to him. Let him, again, like the previous answer, kind of let him look and play with the food. It might take him a few weeks to pick something up and try it, to put it in his mouth, but really let him kind of get to grips with it and let him kind of experience the food even before he tastes it. The next question then says, my teen who has ASD developed an eating disorder about a year ago. She will only eat healthy food and refuses to eat any fats. She was receiving mental health support, but now we're on her own as she was reluctant to attend. They did help her with strategies that helped her gain weight eventually, but we're both worried in case things get bad again. She's also becoming vegetarian recently. My questions are, what food should I make sure she's eating? And what healthy vegetarian fats are there? I think in this case you're dealing with like kind of two things here. You're dealing with a child with ASD, so an autistic child. I have an autistic child as well, so I know some of the struggles that we go through. And also you are dealing with, you know, some kind of maybe somewhere on the spectrum of an eating disorder. I would say that you need to kind of go and get as much help as you can in this. I know you say that she was receiving some support and maybe she's refusing it, but even some support that you can get yourself. I think this is a very individual case and it probably needs a little bit more individual support and individual help. But in the meantime, in terms of foods, healthy fats, nuts, again, nuts are absolutely fantastic. They are brilliant for vegetarians. If you can, does she eat dairy? So if you can get kind of cheese, get butter. Butter's a great one because it's you can put it into a lot of things. Like even for my kids, sometimes I put butter into a pasta sauce, like a tomato pasta sauce, just to boost the fat content. So, you know, obviously we're not talking like massive amount of lard or anything, but like a tablespoon here or there can be really good to boost the fat intake. But otherwise, my advice really would be to go back and seek some more support, even if it's just kind of advice for yourself. The final question then says, my 8-year-old daughter is a fussy eater and takes ages to finish her food. How can I change this? We are vegetarian and I would also like your advice on introducing new foods as she only wants to stick to her favourites. I've tried decorating the food and presenting it in a fun way. She likes it initially, has a few bites and then rejects it. Help. I think this is probably, I've probably in the other questions covered most of this in terms of what my advice would be. She's 8, so again, you can definitely speak to her about food, about the importance of healthy food, of a balanced diet, of what certain foods are going to do for her body, especially if you're vegetarian. I know you need to be a little bit more conscious of your protein, of your iron intake. In terms of trying new foods, again, I would still use that kind of divided compartment plate. I still use it with my 9-year-old and it still works an absolute treat. Again, she might not eat everything on it, but I would go for the kind of 75%, 25% rule. So 75% of foods you know she's going to like, that she does enjoy, and then 25% of other foods that she isn't so familiar with or she doesn't really like. You could say like just one try, just one bite. That's what I still do with my daughter. We have a one bite rule. She'll try. If she doesn't like it, that's fine. But I will take that food out again the next week or a couple of weeks later and we'll try it again. It's just all about being consistent and persistent with exposing your children to loads of different foods and loads of different flavors. Yeah, so I really hope that was helpful. If anybody needs any more tips or just in general some recipes for your family, then come follow me on social media. I'm at myfussyeater or myfussyeater.com.